talk too long.
Because everybody will start falling down. So if I start falling down, I know I better stop. But I'm really delighted to be able to come here and open the show tonight. And I'm even more delighted that you haven't got sick of me coming over every few years and sort of pontificating on your work. Really pleased to be here. Now, as Annette's already mentioned, I come from South Australia, and there's a thing over there in August, the whole of the month of August, called the SALA Festival. SALA stands for South Australian Living Artists. For the whole of August, artists exhibit their work. This year there were more than 4,500 artists, and a lot of them haven't exhibited their work. Some of them obviously professional artists, a lot of them amateur artists, and they exhibited their work in 573 different venues. And it's throughout Adelaide and of course the regional centres. And they put their work in all sorts of places, not just in community halls like this, not just in galleries, but in shops, for instance. It's nothing to go down to your local butcher shop and there are paintings on the wall. Now, of chooks and cows and all sorts of things in amongst all the meat. And you can go and see works of art in parks, in theatres, even in private houses. One place that we went to, probably the most inspiring place we went to this year, was in a private house, and it was a fabric artist. And the place was like an Aladdin's cave. It had all sorts of fabrics and threads and all sorts of incredible things. Wall hangings everywhere, right through the house. Superb. They also have places like old warehouses. There was one down at Port Adelaide, for instance, where communities of artists, it might be 10 or a dozen artists, have actually taken over these warehouses, and they've created all sorts of spaces. And of course they feed off one another because they look at what others are doing and they encourage one another. And it's wonderful to go to these places because the artists are there and they'll explain about their work. You can see them working and you can have some understanding of what it is they're doing. Fabulous. And of course, at the end of all of this, you come away with an impression about the SALA and about the people involved. And what it is energy, enthusiasm, incredible creativity, wonderful new ideas, redeveloping old ideas. And here I am, a few weeks later, in Drysdale. And it's almost like an extension of SALA, because this is the sort of thing that's happening over there in droves. But here it is, in the middle of the Bellarine. And I can sense the same sort of thing. The energy, the enthusiasm and the joy of actually producing works of art. And when I look at this, and when I look at SALA, and when I look at a whole range of people doing things, I reflect on it, because that's what I do, and I think, well, art making or creativity is probably a fairly fundamental thing that humans do. And believe it or not, if you have a look back through history, you'll probably come to the same conclusion. What about the cavemen? Before they even spoke or wrote, presumably, they were painting on walls. They were putting their thoughts into visual form. When you have a look at things like Stonehenge, they were creating things, they were making things. Now there are lots and lots of reasons why they're doing this, probably. And they vary from religion to perhaps encouraging the hunt or whatever it might be, but they're doing it as a basic, as a fundamental thing. And this is something that we overlook. People overlook the fact that creativity and creating things, making works of art, putting things into visual form is a fundamental human activity. And if you think about it, once you get away from that, once you get away from that creativity, you get the opposite. And that's when people stop being human. That's one of the things I've noticed. Another thing is the creative process. I'm most interested in the creative process. Lots and lots of people have read about it, but I want people to think about this, not just the artists who are here, but other people. Have you ever been involved in the creative process of making things? Building boats, where's Max? Building boats, decorating cakes, writing stories, painting pictures. Have you ever been involved in a creative activity like that? And have you ever noticed that when you are totally immersed in that creative activity, you lose track of time? Yes, I can hear. Sometimes hours and hours and hours can go by. A very famous one was, we worked with this man together, and he was in charge of the maintenance at one of the places we were working at, and he was a big bruiser, this man, a real macho type, and he'd actually built a new room in the back of his house, and he had a great big wall, and he said he wanted to paint a picture for it. And of course he wanted to paint a Jackson Pollock. Because he said, of course, anybody can paint a Jackson Pollock, because all you do is fling around paint. Well, to make the long story short, he spent 9 months of frustration because he kept on coming along to me and saying, what I'm doing is expletive crap. And he said, it's harder than you think. And so I gave him DVDs, I gave him books to read, and I want you to have a look at the way he's doing it, etc, etc, etc. 10 months later, he came back to me, and it was, I remember, after the October long weekend, and he was beaming. Meanwhile, of course, I'd said to him things like, now what you need to do is prepare your canvas, because there'll come a point when you want to actually work on this canvas. And there'll come a point when you'll be able to do it. And so he prepared this 5 metre long canvas by about 1.5 metres. And I said, well, now don't do anything onto it just yet, because you're going to make a mess of it. And he realised that this piece of canvas that he's primed was really quite valuable, so he wasn't going to mess it up. And he tried on butcher's paper, he tried all sorts of things, and eventually, on this long weekend, his family had disappeared for the weekend. He came along on the Tuesday back to school, and he was beaming, because he said, nobody at home, I started at 2 o'clock, and he said, the next time I looked at my watch, it was 3 o'clock the next morning. And he said, 13 hours just went by that. And he said, it worked, it worked. And he was just delighted. I said, well, let's have a look at it. And of course it had worked. And he was capable of then telling me, have a look at these intricate cobwebs and see how they overlap one another. And have a look at the way the colour has bled, where the first layer hasn't quite dried and the colour has bled into it. And he was thrilled. And he said to me, how much is it worth? I said, well, would you like to sell it? He said, no, it's going to be mine. So I said, well, what do you think? Well, he said, it only took me 13 hours. And I said, no, it didn't. It took you 9 months. Because you learned from all of these things that went wrong. You learnt about how to do it, what sort of control you needed, What about the consistency of the paint? How did you go about it? And I tell you what, as a result of that, his appreciation for what he'd done, and I'm assuming his appreciation for art probably developed quite significantly after that. The creative process is quite a significant thing. And the other thing that strikes me is the motivation that people have. And many of you have different motivations. Some of you want to create real things. Some of you might say, look, I really want to be able to paint portraits. I really want to make them look like a person. Others might say, I want to make something that really looks round. Or I want to be able to draw something in perspective that's accurate. Or you might go a little bit further and you might say, I really want to paint something as though you're looking through water. Others might be interested in textural things, and you want to play and you want to be tactile with your work. Others are interested in colour. Others want to tell stories. Look at Annette, for instance, who told us the story of the train journey from Western Australia through to Sydney. Storytelling. Look at political cartoonists and the stories they tell. What about the person who just wants to escape their family and do some work by themselves in their own little corner and just get away from the humdrum of life? Lots and lots and lots of motivations. Does it matter? You could keep on going and going. It doesn't matter what motivates you, so long as you do it. So my suggestion to everybody, especially the artists here, is keep on doing it, keep on enjoying it, keep on being aware of the fact that this is an important fundamental of what it makes us human. Keep on displaying it, and hopefully for those people who view it, maybe their lives can be enriched just as yours is too. So thank you, have a lovely week, and I hope I haven't gone on too long.
No, you haven't opened it, John.
I haven't opened it. Well, I have. It gives me great pleasure in opening this exhibition once again. Thank you.
All I need to say to wrap that up is thank you for coming and joining the artists for this celebration of the work. We hope some of you might be happy to purchase some work or some reproductions of work like our small works table, and please enjoy it. Please tell your friends to come in and tell them that it's open for the whole week, because it's the first time we've done that. And I think I should get back to Steve Murphy and the beautiful music now, so enjoy the rest of the evening.